Good morning, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful black people. I hope that all is well in your world, wherever you are, and whatever you decide to do on this beautiful, beautiful Saturday in early May of the year 2020. My beautiful, intelligent, genuine, natural, authentic black brothers and sisters. The word is antisocial. When you hear that word, when someone uses that word, believe you me, from my perspective, it is not an indication of deficiency or intelligence or lack of intelligence. Antisocial behavior, from my position, is a trait of intelligence. Antisocial behavior, from my perspective, is a trait, a characteristic of intelligence in a world that is full of people that are conformers. They are conformists, always following the trends, always following the crowd and their peers. Antisocial behavior is a characteristic of one's intelligence. My beautiful, intelligent black brothers and sisters. That's the end of that story. Rap music, at one point, during its inception, was definitely, directly a positive influence. And then, after racist white folks saw that the white kids was interested, wanting to be able to perform that rap music like black folks were, these white racist executives with Sony, MTV, and others said, let's kill rap music. Let's kill hip hop, because it is bringing black folks, people that look like me, together, and it is even having a very positive influence on white folks also. Therefore, it must be killed. And that is what white folks have done to most rap music and hip hop in May of 2020. The other word that I want to talk about today is Whitesplaining. Whitesplaining. White folks really do need to stop white-splaining racism to me, to you, to the world. White folks need to stop doing that. Health officials issue public warnings about spikes in everything from the flu to measles. But there is one contagious disease virus that these health authorities are totally ignoring. And that is the outbreaks of white folks, whitesplaining. Whitesplaining is an affliction that's triggered when some white folks hear a person, especially a black person or a person of color, complain about racism. They will immediately explain in a condescending tone while the person is wrong, getting too emotional or seeing race in everything. Yes, white folks, I see race in everything, and so do you. Nonetheless, you don't have the courage, the honesty, the truthfulness to admit it. I see race in everything. The implications. These white folks know more about how racism operates than those who have struggled against it for most of their lives. To become a victim of whitesplaining is infuriating at times. Imagine a plumber trying to tell a pilot how to land a plane, or a man trying to tell a mother what it feels like to give birth. Fortunately, whitesplaining is not a silent epidemic. Some of the biggest headlines about race recently have featured some form of whitesplaining. For example, Republican lawmakers in the state of Wisconsin engaged in legislative whitesplaining when they blocked their black Democratic counterparts from honoring a former NFL quarterback during Black History Month because he was too controversial. They were talking about Colin Kaepernick, my beautiful, intelligent black brothers and sisters. Look at Virginia Democratic Governor Ralph Northam. He whiteplaned when he referred to slaves as indentured servants. Can you believe that? The white Democratic governor of Virginia. He tried to whitesplain away that our ancestors were slaves. Instead, he referred to them as indentured servants from Africa. After having to apologize for a yearbook photo of a person in blackface, while admitting he once wore blackface at a Michael Jackson dance contest. Whitesplaining is what white folks do regularly, especially during and around the topic of racism. Conservative commentators whitesplained when they dismissed critics who accuse President Trump, that idiot Trump, of insulting the descendants of those Native Americans that was involved in the trail of tears, dying along the way. One of the most tragic tragic episodes in Native American history. Look it up. It's called The Trail of Tears. And never forget actor Liam Neeson. Liam Neeson could have gotten an award for his white-splaining performance by a man in denial after he told a black journalist he was not racist, after confessing to roaming the streets looking for a random black bastard to kill after a woman he knew said she had been raped by a black man. And the former Starbucks CEO, Howard Schultz, served up a grand version of white-splaining jargon when he told a CNN town hall, "I honestly do not see color." Bullshit. There are different strains, strains, of white-splaining, but what unites them all is the belief that white folks are more qualified to decide what's racist and what is not racist. This is what white folks are trying to do. There's an author, and his name is Jonathan Walton. He wrote a book. It is entitled The 12 Lies That Hold America Captive. Read the book. White men in particular have felt free to define standards of beauty, goodness, and even freedom for all people. So why not define racism as well? White folks are defining the beauty standard, goodness, and freedom of all people. So why can't white folks define racism as well? The power to define is reserved for white folks, which is the crux, CRUX, of white-splaining, my beautiful, intelligent black brothers and sisters. There are some phrases that triggers white-splaining. The situation this week in Wisconsin, last week in Wisconsin, is a good example of how quickly white-splaining can spread. Some black Democratic lawmakers wanted to honor former NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick for his protest against police brutality as part of Black History Month. But some white Republicans, lawmakers, decided that they should determine which black people were worthy of being honored. Not black lawmakers. White folks should decide that. A clear case of racist white folks. White-splaining away their racism. These white folks said that only black heroes should be celebrated during Black History Month were those who would not divide people. The Republican Party have been dividing people since the 1960s. And they have the audacity to resist black lawmakers wanting to celebrate the tactics the protests, the resistance that Colin Kaepernick presented against police brutality. The symptoms of whitesplaining are so subtle that sometimes even well-meaning white folks are not aware that they have been infected with the virus of whitesplaining. It's similar to situations when men are often surprised to learn how much they talk over women. Observe, especially white folks, white boys. Observe how they will talk over women, will talk down women. There's another author. Her name is Marsha Z. Johnson. She's author of an essay entitled 6 Ways Well-Intentioned White Folks Whitesplain Racism. It's a good article, my beautiful, intelligent black brothers and sisters. Here's a few phrases that white folks will use to whitesplain away. They will say things like, "But I'm not a racist." They will say, "You're being so divisive." And one of the favorites, "You're getting emotional." If you try to tell me that I should not be emotional about a racial justice issue, then I already know that you don't understand the issue. Because emotion is a natural response to oppression. And having someone judge how I feel about it just makes me feel worse. White folks want to use whitesplaining to explain away racism, injustices, public lynching, just to name a few. I would say that when you encounter white people who offer corrections, then especially when you're talking about race and racism, do not allow those white folks to whitesplain away it. You must check them right then. I would not presume to explain science to a scientist. So, white folks, please do not try and explain racism to me. But for whatever reason, when it comes to race, there is this idea that someone with zero experience with racism, I have lived with it, but yet I cannot explain it. These white folks who have never lived with racism, had to deal with racism, want to suggest to me that they are much better explaining racism to me. The history of whitesplaining. Whitesplaining isn't anything new. White people have been assuming that people of color, especially black folks, are not reliable witnesses about their own experiences for centuries. And I will say that again. The history of whitesplaining. White folks have been assuming that people of color and black folks are not reliable witnesses about their own experiences for centuries. Even slavery was white-explained away during slavery. Slavery will be white-explained away today if you bring the subject up with a group of white folks. There's an essay, and it is entitled White Ignorance. The philosopher Charles W. Mills said that in the 19th century, enslaved black folks were not seen as having the authority or credibility to describe their own experiences. Slave narratives had to have white authenticators to confirm that what a slave said about slavery was indeed true. Bullshit. Whitesplaining is some bullshit, my beautiful, intelligent black brothers and sisters. Many white folks still do not want to know what blacks was really experiencing back then or even now. People, black folks, that grew up during the Jim Crow era, as I did, when you try to explain or comment about what you saw or what a black person was experiencing, insisting on being accurate. But the world that we black folks was born into didn't want that. Its very survival depended on not knowing, not seeing, and certainly not saying anything at all about what it was really like. Hence is that attitude of too many black folks today. White folks want us to be quiet and have the attitude that our own survival today is dependent on not knowing, not seeing, and certainly not saying anything at all about what racism is really like right here on this plantation called America. Whitesplaining is an out for racist white folks. Do not allow them to use whitesplaining to make themselves, appease themselves, to make themselves feel better about the truth, facts. Someone like Trump, he white-explains away anything that has to do with people of color, black folks, women, etc., etc. That's what I have on this one. Please go to thethrasherway.libsyn.com. There you will gain access to all that I do. Talk to you again soon.